Hey everyone, welcome to another chunk of the top 100 games of all time. For those of you just tuning in, this is something I do every year now on the anniversary of running the Broken Meeple, usually during August time. I do a top 100 games of my favourite games of all time. And I started off doing 75, now it's 100. I've done several videos already, going from 100 all the way to this point. If you haven't started watching, I suggest you go back and scroll through in order. But, you know, if you just want to see the top half or the top 10, that's fine. You know, as long as I'd love to hear from you guys as to whether you think these games should be higher, lower, that kind of thing. So, without further ado, let's get stuck into my 40 to 31. My number 40, I'm going to be rather careful with because I'm holding it right now and I really don't want the lid to come off this because it's got an insert in it, but there's a lad in this box and I don't want it to come apart when I start talking about it. Now, Tom Vassell puts this as his number one game of all time. Now, it is a great game. Number one, no. But certainly it makes my number 40! Oh, and it is Cosmic Encounter. Yes, I know this is a divisive game with some people, but I love negotiation games. I think they're great for social interaction, for, you know, fun, light-hearted, but intense, fueled arguments, and just that cool debate back and forth. But this one introduces all sorts of aliens with freaky special powers that break the rules of the game, and you're constantly allying with other people, backstabbing them, negotiating, in all to try and win either a group victory or to try and pull out that solo win yourself. This has got, I think it's got every expansion to date in here, and it is somewhat packed. Maybe I've missed out one expansion, I'm not sure, maybe the most recent, but whatever, there's so much in this game, there's no way I can play every single alien. There are some aliens I haven't even tried in here yet. It just doesn't get played enough to warrant it, so I'll probably stop buying expansions at this point. But there's so much in here to keep you going. I want it to hit the table more often, but when it does, usually at conventions, that's a very good place for me to bring it, it's such a barrel of laughs. People enjoy it, people have a good time. Yes, it's not for everyone, I admit, but for those who like that kind of social negotiation game, this is a must try. Whether it's expanded or not, doesn't matter. Just get at least five of you together and play this game. It's great. Cosmic Encounter 40. My number 40 is actually a new entry to this list. Cosmic Encounter dropped 20 or so places, mainly just because it's not hitting the table as much as some of my higher ones, but this one now is brand new and all the way as high as number 39. It is certainly not the highest new entry in this list. We're going to have to get into the top 10 to find a new entry that much higher. But this one is a simple, yet very clever, two-player abstract game called Yinch. Now, for those not familiar with this series, there is a designer, Chris Berm, and he does this series called the Gift series. They're all two-player abstract games. They vary slightly in how they play, but they generally use a stark board with like black and white pieces, and you have to do various things with them. It could be stacking columns, it could be overlapping, jumping, whatever. All the games that he does, though, they're really solid games. They're good fun. Some are better than others, and people have their own opinions as to which one is best. This is mine. It's the only Gift Project game on my top 100, but I really love this one. All I heard was the Dice Tower go on about it. I heard Z Garcia rave about this one when he talks about the Gift Project. I think it's like one of his top 10 games of all time. Maybe I'll have to double check the last list, but certainly is top 20. It's a great game. One that I was really surprised how much I liked it. It's so simple to teach. You are basically trying to get 5 in a row with these black and white and the baked-like pieces. It's so nice feeling. It looks very striking on the table. But you're trying to get 5 in a row. And the idea is that you have these rings that you move around on this grid, sort of like starry line grid. And as you leap over pieces, they flip to the other colour. So they're white on one side, black on the other. And the idea is that using these rings, you have to block your opponent from moving theirs, whilst flipping over all these different little counters to white and black, black to white, and so forth, to try and get 5 in a row. But when you do, you are one step closer to winning the game, but you also lose one of your rings, so it's that little bit harder for you to do stuff, and your opponent gets the chance to catch up. Really neat design, and yes, it's hard for me to get two-player games to the table in general, but this is an easier one to get to the table, because yes, The strategy is not something you're going to know off the top of your head, and I'm certainly no expert at this. I mean, I get beaten at this regardless. And it's just so easy to teach you. It's just like, there's two of us, let me show you this game Yinch. Here you go, 5 minutes, you're getting going already. Such a good one. Definitely my pick of the Gift Project series I've played so far. I've not played them all, but I've certainly played this one. Tsar and Divan I've played. Maybe the Link one that's coming out would be interesting, but I haven't had much of an impact on taking on the other ones. So, you know, I would like to try them, but like I said, there's only so much room for two-player abstracts in my collection, and this is definitely taking up a spot. 39, new to the list, Yinch. My number 38 has climbed 13 places since its last year entry, partially because of a new second edition which improved on the rulebook, partially because I've got it to the table more, mostly as a solo experience, and enjoyed it that much more. And yes, I'm kind of embarrassed to say it because I did once call this game overrated. And I wasn't a big fan of it when I played it as a 4-player, really long game, where the rules were a bit like, does that work? Does that work? It was a little bit clunky. But we now have a more concise rulebook, even though it's huge, and I've played it more solo than I have with other players, and I'm really enjoying it solo. I'd play it with 2, maybe 3. I don't really want to play it with 4, but I do enjoy playing it on its own, on my own, and that is, oh god, Ignacy Trzewicz's Robinson Crusoe. This is the second edition version. I got rid of my old Z-Man, old version, the first edition, in order to make room for this one, because I especially not only wanted a square box, but I also wanted those new rules. Yes, you don't have to buy this to get the rulebook, you could just download it, but I wanted the whole package. This is a very cool thematic Euro co-op game though. Very hard. Very hard. This thing will slap you around many times. In fact, I've had a string of victories lately, but I've only won the first scenario once. And I've somehow managed to beat the family one, I think family Swiss Robinson one, on my first try. Whether I got lucky or whether, I don't know. It's quite easy to get a rule wrong in this game, for all I know it could have been that. But the story and immersion in this game is solid. It was always something I credited about this game, even when I thought it was overrated. The theme is strong, the fact that the cards, when you come across them, you go, do you want to eat these gooseberries? Yeah, I will. I'll get this benefit now. Goes into a deck, might come out later, and it might be a good or bad thing, usually bad, because this game hates you. And it's really just cool how you really do feel like you're trying to survive by the skin of your teeth on this island, you know, just against things like the weather or a roaming predator and stuff like that, whilst trying to build your shelter, build various tools. The scenarios in the box, you've got 7 with this one because you've got the King Kong special one in there. They're all very different. They play very differently. I mean, you could be trying to build a log fire in one, you could be trying to survive cannibals in another. There's lots of cool differentiations with this, and like I say, I am ashamed for calling it overrated. Still not the biggest fan playing it with 4 players, and even 3 is quite a lot, you know, but 2 players is fun with this, but I'm having a kick out of this just as a solo experience. Definitely not overrated, definitely worth your time. Robinson Crusoe climbing up my top 100 to 38. My number 37 has dropped 22 places, and again, just mainly a time factor. It's not easy to get some of these big Euro games to the table as much as I do like these. Now, you might remember in a previous video I pulled out a game by mistake when I was grabbing my Vinyos Deluxe Edition behind me. Right now, I get to pull out the correct one, and yes, I will make sure it's the correct one this time. Yes, this one. That is Vital Lacerda's The Gallerist. This is a huge box, as Eagle Griffin seems to be doing with most of theirs. But Vital Lacerda is a Euro game designer that I am really, singing the praises for right now. Because I do like some heavy games. I don't just like light stuff. But this designer is giving me the heavy game that I need, but also making the theme feel really strong. You know, you feel like what you're doing in this game makes sense, and there's always lots of options. The game rewards you at various intervals. You know, like you do this, you get a bonus, you do this, you get a bonus, and that always brings a kind of like a happy feeling to me when I'm playing games. I mean, it's much better to have like, you perform this action, you get this little bonus that will help you along the way, compared to, you failed to do this action. Right, you know, that doesn't really sit well with me. And the theme of an art gallery is not one I would go for generally, but it works really well here, and I can get immersed in it. You know, building up an artist, getting their fame higher, you know, going to the international market and getting the bonuses there. I mean, yeah, it's abstracted to a little bit, but that makes sense, and you do get those cool little paintings and sculptures that are actually based on real life art, which is quite a neat little addition. But this one just feels like a very streamlined heavy Euro, because you've only got 4 places you go to with your main worker. But there's 2 different things you can do at each. So, what, 8 different things? That's not too difficult to teach. There's a lot implied, and there's more to learn in terms of, like, how do I do well in the long term? But that's the same with every heavy Euro. You're going to have a learning experience. But this one just feels that little bit easier to grasp and that little bit easier to teach compared to a lot of heavy Euros, and even to a lot of his other Euros. I mean, the Vinyos Deluxe Edition I put out earlier, this is definitely a lot easier to teach and learn than that one is. You know, this is almost like, you know, I want to try out one of Vital Lacerda's heavy Euros. Which one do I recommend as a first go? The Gallerist. That's my pick. That's why it's higher on the list than Vinyos, because it's easier to bring out. But one thing that, I mean, the component quality is stellar. It's brilliant. You know, it looks great on the board. There's a lot of stuff to manipulate. And I like the fact that as well as having the, you know, your worker that you put out for actions, you can also put out the servants out to, I think they're called servants or employees, whatever. And they go out and do little sort of mini actions at other places. And if somebody kicks you out of a spot, because you're not blocked out of a place, you can kick someone out. But by doing so, they might be able to get a secondary action for that space. So there's a lot of back and forth, give and take, and being efficient with the actions that you're going to have, as well as making the most of the bonus actions you could have by thinking, he's definitely going to want to go there. He's going to go there. I'm going to leave a servant there so that when he does go there, I'm going to get a benefit and I better be ready for it. It's a solid, heavy Euro. Is it my favourite of his designs? From a design point of view, yes, this is his best design. From a personal enjoyment point of view, though, not quite. Wait and see. But the Gallerist has, yes, it has dropped a few places, but it's still solid on my top 100 at 37. My number 36 has dropped 26 whole places. Again, just time on the table and the fact that there's been a lot of new entries on this list. It was my number 10 last year, and I still really enjoy this game. I mean, come on, it's in my top half, my top 100. It's still great. But, you know, like I say, I think it's just not hit the table as much recently. Maybe that's why it's dropped a little bit. But I still really love this twist, as I like to call it, Citadels 2.0, and that is the fantastic reprint Mission Red Planet from Fantasy Flight. This is their 2nd edition. I never even got to try the 1st edition. I just kept hearing the Dice Tower rave on about it and say how amazing it is. Well, I wanted to play it because it sounded like something I would love. And funny enough, I did. It was number 10 last year, and it's still 36 this year. Still one I really like. It is Citadels 2.0, because as well as that role selection mechanic, you also have the map of Mars made out of very cool tiles, as Phobos' moon around it as well. And you're trying to get area control on Mars to mine gems in order to score victory points. You've also got secret missions you're trying to do. There's a bit of a take that where you take out other people's astronauts and blow up certain ships. It's, you know, a bit light-hearted in that respect, but it's very clean. It's very streamlined. I love the role selection thing. You know, I love it in Citadels. I love it in this one. This one just adds that little bit of extra game to the whole affair rather than just, oh, I build a city with some cards. No, this one you've got an area control game as well as the role selection. It's got a strong theme. The components are stellar. This is, I mean, like I say, Fantasy Flight, when they come to do reprints, there's no better. Fantasy Flight just really know how to do a good reprint. So Mission Red Planet still going strong. If you like role selection and area control, you have got to give this one a try. My number 36. My number 35 has dropped 22 places, and I know it sounds like a lot of these games are dropping lots. It's not that I don't enjoy them, it's just a lot of things have shot up and there's been a few new entries. There's only so much room for these games. But this one doesn't get enough buzz, I don't feel. It's a solid design from Bruna Kavala, and it really needs to be played more. You know, people who are like, oh, I really want to try this game, let me try it. They do genuinely enjoy it, and it deserves that. It is a fantastic game, and it is called Abyss. You wouldn't really be able to tell just from the face on the front. It doesn't really reveal much. But Abyss, there you go, does that help? Is one, superbly gorgeous. This has got some of the best artwork I've seen in a game ever, and it's just, oh, that whole under the sea type theme is very strong here with that art and with what you're doing. But what you are doing here is that you are trying to get various different sea creatures, different cards, in order to win influence with these lords. And the lords are characters with special abilities broken up into different categories, like some are good for money, some are good for victory points, that kind of thing. And throughout it, you're trying to gain these location tiles that give you endgame scoring abilities, and it's relatively simple in how it works. But you've got lots of different abilities, you've got these pearls as a currency, and what has kept this high up is the Kraken expansion for it. Because if you remember Lords of Waterdeep, the Scoundrels of Skullport, it had that corruption mechanic, like do cool stuff, take the corruption, it's worth negative points. This has got something that's almost exactly the same. It's got the black pearls, and if you take black pearls, they're worth negative points. But if you have the most black pearls, you also have the Kraken miniature, which gives you even more negative points. And you can only spend them so fast. So if you take too many of them, it's going to take you a little bit longer to get rid of them. So how far do you go? How much corruption do you take? That little extra element to this really elevates it. One caveat, the random digging treasure tiles I think you get in the expansion, don't care. They're too random, don't like them, I don't include them in the game. But the corruption mechanic, always play it, it's always great. But this one is just, it's underrated. You've just got to try it. It's one of those things that's hard to describe, you've just got to try it yourself and see what you think. Pretty certain my local game cafes have got a copy in stock, in which case try and play it. Failing that, get in touch with me if you're at one of those local ones in Southampton, Portsmouth, Petersfield, and I'll bring it along and show you how it's played. It's one that's staying in my collection. I wish the corners were in slightly better condition, but that's what happens when you transport boxes to game nights on a regular basis. But still love it. Gorgeous to look at. One of Bruno Cafala's best designs, Abyss. My number 34 is the first of 3 new entries to my top 100. Yes, 3 new games have managed to, well, technically 4 if you count Yinch, have managed to find their way into this chunk of my top 10. Now, I said before that I like heavy Euros if they have a strong theme, and I mean super strong theme. That's what keeps me engaged for the long play time it has. This has got a big setup time, so much so that I had to buy a particular insert for it just to speed that up. There's a lot to teach. It can be prone to AP, but when you're used to the game, when you've got the right people, it's such good theme. In fact, I'm going to have to get up and get it from the shelf here because it's huge. It's a huge box. Oh God. Oh God. There you go. And I'm just going to bring it into shot and wha-bam. Anachrony. I'll take the sleeve off so you can see a little bit. This is the Kickstarter version. Now, I did not buy it originally on Kickstarter. I tried it first as a retail version, and then I believe I actually bought this off Paul Harris from HandyCon actually. And this one has all the upgraded components as well as the miniatures, the big giant things. But oh my God, this is a huge heavy box because not only does it contain a lot of stuff in it, but I've got an insert from, I think, Laserox. They're based in the Netherlands, I believe. And, you know, I bought their insert. It was expensive. Yes, it's a luxury item, but my God, is the setup so much easier with this now. But Anachrony is such a good worker placement game for theme. I mean, the main reason it's not higher on the list is just because it is hard to teach people and it is a long game. You know, it's an involved game and may take a while. But, my God, this one. The setting is like a futuristic setting and you're trying to, you know, build up your faction as the strongest. You're getting resources like water and minerals and various things like that. But the added addition to this, as well as just general like collect resources and do cool stuff, is the time travel element. Because the rounds are all leading up to this doomsday where a meteorite's going to hit and it's going to cause havoc. And the game changes dramatically after it hits. Like, you do this stuff leading up to it, and then when it hits, the board state completely flips, and suddenly like the actions are different and you can get points for doing other things. Add the Doomsday module in here, you could either tailor how soon or how late, or even at all, if the event actually happens. So you've got this cool random element, well not random, but this cool like variable element as to when it might hit. It might hit early, it might hit late, and that will, you know, have an effect on your game. But the time travel element, oh my god, this really does get me talking nuts. Basically, each round you play is a phase in time, and at the start of that phase, you can decide whether you want to get a bonus resource, bonus mech, bonus worker, bonus water, whatever. And you flip your tiles over and put them on to say what it is, and it's done in secret, like closed fist type thing, and you put them on. Sounds great. Problem is, what you are doing is you are borrowing these from your future self. And so if you leave this whole thing open too long, it causes time paradoxes which could give you negative points and clog up your board. So in order to pay that off and to avoid the paradox, you have to eventually, in a future round, give a resource back to effectively the supply by essentially giving that resource back to your past self who took it in the first place. Oh god! I've seen time travel done in games before and most of them don't get the theme right. This one gets it perfect. Every time I talk about that mechanic, it just fills me with buzz. Because when I first heard it, I thought, it's like literally open gold mouth. It just sold me. Now, that's not the only thing I like about this game. I think it's a really cool worker placement game. I think the components are great, especially this Kickstarter version, but even the retail version is solid. It's just a very cool, thematic, highly thematic worker placement game with a lot of options. It's complicated, yes. It's hard to teach, yes. And it can be long. That's why it hasn't gone higher up the list. But who knows where it may stand in the future. But this one is a solid entry. And one of my biggest surprises, because I just barely knew about this game at first. And then suddenly, boom, straight up to 34 on my top 100. Great worker placement game. Anachrony. Right, for my 33, we're going to take a bit of a twist actually. We've dealt with a lot of heavy Euros, some very complex Euros. Now we're going to go straight to a solo-only, light-hearted game. You probably haven't even heard of this one, because I only heard about it when I was at Essen and listening to Eric Summer and Jason Levine talk about it on the live show. Never heard of it, can barely get it in the UK, probably can't even get it in the US either. You mainly have to get it at Essen or from a Korean-based publisher. So I went to the Korean, I forget the name, sorry, but I went to their booth at Essen. Nice young lady showed me how to play this game. I was hooked, bought it instantly. And we're taking the switch. Coffee Roaster. Yes, this high on my top 100, a solo-only game about brewing coffee. Now, stick with me here. This uses the bag building mechanic that you've seen in Orleans and Automobiles and Hyboria, etc. And what you're doing is brewing coffee. You have different types of coffee that are well known around the world, and they have different roast ratings, star ratings that you're aiming for, higher and lower depending on the strength of the coffee. What you do is that you have a pre-selected set of tokens in your bag, and you will draw so many out each round. And you have a certain timer, as to how many rounds you've got in total before you really have to start brewing the coffee. But basically, as the rounds go forward, you'll draw out more tiles. And what you're trying to do is you're performing little shenanigans with the bag in order to take out bad tiles, in order to level up your beans, because they start off at level 0 or stubborn beans, and you need to get them up to as high as level 4 to add to the rating. But if you go too high, they burn and they become like dead weight in your bag. You've got to deal with smoke as the machine gets hotter and hotter. You've got all these other things like taste, aroma, and what's the other one? I forget what the other ones, but there's 3 different things. Taste, aroma, and one other. Maybe I can find out. Taste, aroma, acidity. Aha, yes. I'm not a coffee expert, I drink tea. But you're doing all these cool shenanigans with the bag until eventually you say, right, I'm going to start brewing. You've then got a board with 10 spots and a mug, and depending what special abilities or special things you've brought on, this might influence how easy or hard this next bit becomes. But you draw 10 tiles, and you place them in the mug, and depending on what rating the total mug is your rating for the coffee. How much you stray to and from, higher or lower than the intended rating gives you a set of points. Whether you can get things like taste, aroma, and that in your cup is worth points. Other things like having a varied amount of beans is worth points. There's lots of ways to score, but primarily you're trying to match that roast rating. And I know that sounds maybe not like the best thing ever, but trust me, this is very addictive. It's well designed, the insert is good, it keeps things separated to a point. Sometimes some tokens do slide over the top of the bits, but minor nitpick. But the theme just really got me engaged. The bag building is a fun mechanic. even though Albions and Hyperborea aren't my favourite games ever, I still like that mechanic. I mean, I love automobiles for that reason. This one takes that and just uses it in a nice, simple solo game that I can do a round in 10 minutes. 10-15 minutes for one brew. Maybe half an hour, 40 minutes for doing the chain of 3. And depending on how well you do in the first one, influences the difficulty for the next one. So it's not just a cakewalk. You try and just basically get as high as you can and see how well you did. It's a great fun, fairly portable, but an unexpected gem from Essen 2016, I believe. Yes, I believe I bought this last year. Still love it. It's staying in the collection, and because it's so hard to get hold of, I am not getting rid of it. It's mine. Hands off. That is Coffee Roaster, new at number 33. My number 32 is the last new entry on this chunk of the top 100, and we're still sticking with light games here. Yes, light games have every right to be as high on the top 100 as heavy ones. This one I only started playing though since I believe just before, no, actually pretty much from the UK Games Expo I started playing this, but it's getting a lot of buzz. It's going well with players that I show it to, and it has become one of my staple gateway games to teach new players. Now there's a lot of these games that have this polyomino setup where you are putting Tetris pieces on the board. Patchwork started it, I believe, and that was an excellent 2-player game, but only for 2 players. And Cottage Garden, an Uri Rosenberg game, was alright. It was very dry, it was a bit long-winded, and I don't know, it just seemed a little bit fiddly, but I didn't mind it, and that was about making flower beds. But it allowed you to do that same mechanic with more players. Feast for Odin that I mentioned before, it takes that mechanic, but it kind of bloats it to high heaven with like the amount of other stuff in there. This, however, is my chosen staple polyomino gateway game, and that is, you probably already see it in the shelf. Oh, let me get it without knocking everything else over. Come on, there you go. Aran Park. Yeah, I like it. I really do like it. It's so easy to teach people. I take it to events like Dice and that where I'm teaching new players because I can basically say, do you know how to play Tetris? Yes. Do you like bears? Yes. Well, here you go. Let me show you this game. I can teach it to them in 5 minutes or so. It really is that simple, even when you use the advanced mode of using the objectives. I mean, advanced mode, for crying out loud, it's not that advanced. But I like how it's like first come, first serve to get the big points. Scores can be very tight. I even had one game I taught of this where it came down literally to a tiebreaker between 2 of us, and it's just very pleasant. It's a zen game. It just makes you feel sort of as you play it, because it's not complicated at all. The rules are very straightforward. It's mainly just get your grids, put these pieces on there Tetris style, be as efficient, as quick as you can at filling them up, but also try and meet the objectives, as well as, use the symbols that you cover to the best of your ability. It's not just because I love bears that I like this game. It's a very calming game. It hits the table very often because it's definitely a filler. I mean, it says 30 to 45 minutes. That is not a lie. You can get this done in 30 minutes easily. With 4 players, 45 minutes is a breeze. Teach it to kids, teach it to families, no problem. I definitely picked this one over Patchwork and Cottage Garden for my staple gateway polyomino game. Of course, some people differ on that, but this deserves the buzz it gets. Hits the table, and I enjoy playing it, just as a nice light filler, so it deserved to be high on my top 100. Will it stay this high next year? I reckon it will still be high. I mean, I'd like to place bets it might still be in the top half of my top 100, but it's definitely going to be in the top 100, I think, for time to come, because I do enjoy it. There's enough variety in this game to make each game feel that little bit different, but at the end of the day, it's a 30 to 45 minute filler that does the job. Simple, streamlined, quick, fun. Works for me. 32, Aran Park. And finally for this episode, my 31. Dropped only 8 places, it still remains a strong contender in my top 100, mainly because the theme is super strong in this game, and even though there's a lot of rules in it, and certainly a lot on the board, it gives you like effectively a sushi bar full of options that you can do, and that's one thing I love in a good Euro game. Having like, how do I want to play this game? Do I want to go full on this, full on that? What should I do this turn? That looks good. That looks tasty as well. Giving me those choices. I love it. I love it. I love it. But with this one, the theme is solid as well. Level 90 games, hitting it out of the park with this one, with Aragon the Consortium. Now, I've backed the 2nd edition upgrade pack to get the better miniatures and a couple of other things, but I think that Kickstarter is finished now, I'm not entirely sure. But by all means, you know, certainly give this one a look when it comes out. Granted, some of the components could be a little bit better. I mean, I hate the money in this. Plastic, you know, horrible money in this, which is why this box is a bit heavier, because I've replaced it with, I think, a spare set of metal viticulture coins. They work just as fine. But this one has you in a wizard school where the dean has disappeared from weird circumstances and everybody wants to be the next dean. But the way it works is that you have a consortium which secretly votes on particular aspects for the next dean. And you only know so much information to begin the game with. But as the game goes on, you will place workers, your different mages that have different special abilities on, and you will use these room tiles to gain mana, gold, spells, items, all sorts of things, but also to gain insight into what the consortium is voting for. One of them might want somebody who has the most mana. Somebody might want someone who is obsessed with necromancy. Is there necromancy in this game? Or, you know what I mean, like a school of magic. And there's all sorts of different ones, and they vary from game to game, and people will be finding out different bits of information. So you're looking at everyone else going, he's stockpiling a lot of those. Could that be a consortium person there? You know, and you may find out every single piece of information during the game, but at the expense of doing other stuff that you probably want to do. It can be quite cutthroat because you are occasionally zapping each other's mages down to the infirmary, and so you better be cool with that. But this has so many options in this game. Granted, it gets a bit long, and I certainly will not touch this game with 5 players. I know the expansion that I've got in here also makes up to 6. That is ludicrous. Do not play that ever. But with 3 to 4 players, this is still a solid game. 3 is definitely my sweet spot, as per usual, broken record. But 4 works as well. And I've got a dedicated group who love this game. So we can knock out a game quicker than the average group probably would, just because we've gotten so used to it. But so many options, a great theme. The expansion adds even more options to it, even, you know, improves on a couple of mechanics. You know, granted I had to upgrade the coins, but, you know, it's easy enough. People can do that to their heart's content. But really like it. It's an intense, heavy Euro, but wonderfully, wonderfully thematic, and deserves the spot at number 31. And that is it for another chunk of 10. We're already at the top 30. So we're going to have 30 to 21. We're going to have 20 to 11. 20 to 11. And then we're going to have the 10 through 1. 3 more videos, guys, before you find out what my number 1 is. Okay, some of you might have guessed it, but have you? You don't know yet. You may think you do, but you might not necessarily know. Oh well, enough little ominous things for that. I'll see you on the next batch of 10. For now, I hope you enjoyed these games. Tell me what you think of them. Do you think they should have been higher or lower? What games have you not seen on the top 100 yet that you're hoping will appear that are your favourites too? I want to engage with you guys, so by all means, leave the feedback, leave the comments, get in touch. On Facebook, Twitter, email, YouTube, whatever. See you soon, guys. Take care.